Thank you, milestones. Thank you, because I was talking and I didn't see the muted button. Okay, so peace, 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 family. Let me start all the way over. Appreciate you. Um, Thank you guys for showing up. Amerigal Milestones. Who else is up there? OMAC. Some of the ones that I see in there right now. What we're going to do today, from the title, you see that it's reading on the on the origin of language. So I'm going to actually read chapter 1 in here because some people, I know one lady, one sister, she's ordering the book, and I don't know how many other people are going to order the book. I think it's a good book to read, and I haven't read it, but just looking at it, I think it's a good book to read. Um, excuse me. So, I don't know who's going to get the book or not, but just in the interim of if some people did get the book, I figured out, and are waiting for it to come, I figured I'd just come up here and read it for you guys. Um, Maybe it'll pique your interest. Maybe some people can't afford the book or can't find the book, or I don't know if they have a PDF of it or not, but just to kind of, help out just a little bit with the information. I think language is a good one to look at because not only does it we look at the newer languages, and we're kind of lacking on that because I don't speak Spanish, I don't speak French, I don't know Latin, these kind of things, and any other language other than English, and sometimes don't know that very well. But either way, I think that, when dealing with this book, it allows us to go back further into antiquity and look at some other things and maybe put other cultures, if you would, um, especially written cultures, on the map, because most of the time it seems like we're only talking about, like today, what was mentioned about Kemet or the Meta Nature or Egypt or all of that. I just think that this book kind of slides us back into antiquity to be able to compare some other things that went on. So I think it's a good book to read. Now, I don't even know if I want to say everything that I was going to say a minute ago, but the truck is almost done. We did some, I was going to come up yesterday, but I couldn't. I needed to handle things with the truck, and we were one step closer, at least. I got some things to straighten out tomorrow, as early as possible, and maybe I can tell y'all about some of the hiccups that I've run into as I've been doing this because it's been real interesting, but I'm gonna need somebody to explain what the hell happened here, what's going on with what I'm doing. But either way, we got our logo for the truck. We got our decals put on. I can't show it to you yet because y'all know with some of the numbers, I got to hide those numbers because people be trolling and doxing and all this stuff. But the logo that I picked, because of the name of my trucking company, I had an idea, and ironically, the logo turned out better than I thought, from the people who helped, who designed it for or helped design it for me, the guy who was helping me. And ironically, it looks like something very American, if you would. And I say American for the Western Hemisphere. I know y'all get all triggered about all kind of terms and stuff, but a brother showed me what the symbol was that I had selected, and I didn't even know. So I want to show y'all that symbol at least. It's not my actual logo, but I want to show y'all the symbol at least, because I'm running into some connections that are crazy as I don't know what. Okay, but my logo almost looks like this right here. This is what they call the kwapu, and it is a belt that people wore around their waist in the Inca tradition, I believe it was, in order to keep their history. And I didn't even know that. My logo was pretty much looking out into the horizon, something about direction. Um, some of you know that my name, you see it, Navi Poet, but it comes from night vision poetry. So this has something to do with night vision, being able to see through the dark and to pick a particular logo and then find out it's similar to this right here, which is a belt that you keep um, that the people here in the Western Hemisphere used to use to tell their history was really interesting, um, awe-inspiring, actually. And even when you think about these knots that are on this, they mean something. And so I asked in the chat at one point, who were there any people who told about our history without written or verbal languages? And booyah, this is what we're looking at here. Not to go into the religious narrative, but they used to talk about tightening the girdle of truth and stuff like this, and that's what that is, your history, in my opinion. So let me stop sharing that. That was just a little fun fact right there. Okay, just a little fun fact. So let me stop sharing that. So we're gonna get into this book. I showed y'all a uh, couple of the what do you call those things? The pictures. Um, a couple of the pictures. So we're gonna be dealing with three pictures today, not in this order, but this will be one of the pictures. Um, and they showed the different families. I thought it was interesting that when you look at the Indo-European, that this is all that stuff up in Europe. Um, I'm assuming Finland, Scandinavia, all those places up there has, if I got that correctly, this is the one going down. Yeah, that those areas are the Indo-European, whereas you can see that the Turkish is more to the east, closer to China, and then you can see that the Semitic families are more down in Africa. Um, so this is one of the maps, one of the illustrations that they had in the book that really, had me thinking like, what does this really mean when we're talking about we speak Indo-European, or we speak English or Romance languages or whatever the fuck. This thing about, prior to them going down into North Africa, if you would, meaning the Moors, if you would. Okay. But so this is one of the pictures that'll be in here tonight, and I'll try to keep these in order. But this is not in order. This is the picture in the middle. Then we have this picture that will be brought out as far as the languages are concerned. Okay. This is another illustration from this chapter 1 that will be read tonight. Okay. Um, and some of these I'll probably just leave up here for you guys to look at. And then this is the other one, and I believe this is the one that shows more of the African. I think that's the African. I can't see it when how I'm looking at it. I can't see. I can't see what it says in the upper left-hand corner. Um, which you guys know from last week's, or not last week, our last presentation, that A through L represents a particular language family, and particular language, and then I think 1 through 5 was equaling a certain language family. Okay, a little fun fact before we get started, and I'm gonna actually put my intro back on because I got to run to the ladies' room, for a moment. But one of the things that, little fun fact for some people who didn't know, um, for those of you who saw the movie Sinners, if you guys remember, what was his name, Remick, or whatever his name was, the vampire, that he sung this song called, where he was talking about, um, what did they say? Pick old Robin clean. Okay. And I didn't know what to think about that movie. I mean, not the movie, but that particular song. The banjo was like, oh my God, dan 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 dan, dan, that kind of shit. But of course, that's some of our instruments. That's stems from our instruments and stuff. And I accept that. But that song, Pick Old Robin Clean, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Because on one end, it's like, is this a sexual connotation or is this sinister? Well, I went and looked up the lyrics for the song, but a friend of mine who may show up in this chat tonight uh, asked me to look up a person by the name of Gishi Wiley, Geeshie, Wiley. And to my surprise, that song, Pick Old Robin Clean, was written by a sister. That was a old blues singer, a sister that wrote that song. Some of you might want to go and find Miss Gishi Wiley and look at the lyrics of some of her songs because one of them, I can't remember the name of it, but it talked about her father. And they used to tell stories back then. It talked about her father, what her father told her, and then it talked about what her mother told her, and it has something to do with a daughter in it. And she talked about how she could sit on one side of the Mississippi and look across at her daughter, and or something to that extent. And I found that really interesting because we're talking Mississippi and Arkansas, just like in the movie they were talking Mississippi, and the mulatto sister was representative of Arkansas. But she's mixed. I'm not. I'm just saying. Anyway, so I thought that was really interesting because we're talking about the Delta blues in there. But Miss Gishi Wiley picked old Robin Clean. She said she ain't nothing but a hustling coon. Okay. And I didn't take it wrong, but hey, she was doing what she had to do to survive. But many of us don't know that that sister was part of an all-female, I'll say ensemble. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but that was part of our history being displayed by someone else. And I mean, I did hear one brother talking shit about it, and I was like, damn, I guess he don't know that that song was written by Gishi Wiley, one of our own. This is why history is important, and this is why it's better than trolling and all the other stuff that they're doing to really get down to it and see what was happening. I found it to be interesting. I even found it even more interesting than that because shit, how many people in here? I can't tell y'all that. That's too close. Let's just say I saw something with Miss Ogishi Wiley and it brought tears to my eyes and a twinge in my nose because it had a name that resonates in my family. And I'm still trying to figure out why the fuck did that happen. Okay. But anyway, we're gonna get to this read. Let me throw this intro back on. Y'all can look it up, try to figure out which one it is. Okay, if you want to. But once you see who she is, what they say about her, then you'll know which one it is. But I found that real interesting. Okay. Um, before I go, let me also say that yesterday or the other day when we were looking at this, let me show y'all something. Which one is it? This one here. This was interesting because J right here is the French. It's representative of the French. And as I was telling a friend today, I said, because in my eldership family, the elders in our family, a lot of them had May as a middle name. Us younger generation folks didn't really get the May in our middle name, but it's a lot of Mays in my elders with the sisters. And I saw it when we were talking about this the other day, but it didn't dawn on me until today that this was a way that we held our culture. And I was telling a friend, and y'all don't have to agree with it, you don't have to like it, whatever the case is. You can talk shit about it, whatever the case is. But this M with the diphthong AE right there, um, to me, it seems like it was my family's way in generations past to keep that French connection that we had. Okay, I can't remember what E is because you also see the AE diphthong in that word as well. I think E is English, J is French. So I found that to be very interesting that our family was they were keeping a part of our culture in the name. Okay, so let me go run to the restroom. We're gonna play this. See, I don't think I have this clip up here. If I'm lucky, it might be up there, but no. I had to play it through the speaker the last time. Okay, so I can't play that. So give me a moment, family. I'm gonna Go take a quick little restroom break so I don't have to stop reading. And then we'll get to this read, and hopefully it won't take us long to get through it. Okay. All right. Let's do this right here. Be right back. Peace, 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 family. Okay, we're gonna get started here. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? Okay, let's just keep it right here for a moment. All right, this particular part of the book starts on page number 17. Excuse me. It starts on page 17, and this is a reading from The Origin of Language by Mariette Ruhlen, Ruhlen, written in 1994. We read the prelogue in the last one. On this one, we'll be going into chapter 1, which is about language and history, subtitled Voices from the Past. Now, in the second paragraph, just from what I was reading, perusing, it talks about the word mouse. I find mouse to be very interesting because when we were looking at, I was looking at, uh, I don't know if it was Verlin's or if it was the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. It started to talk about these correlations with language, and it did use the word mouse in different languages and how closely related they are. So I was noticing that in chapter 2 here, it does talk about the English word mouse, the Swedish word mus, M-U-S, the German word maus, M-A-U-S, the Dutch word muis, M-U-I-S, and the Latin M-U-S with a straight line against the U. Then you have the Greek word mus with an upside down chevron. And then you have the Russian, I'm sorry, it's a couple more. You have the Russian MYS with the upside down chevron and an accent mark. You have the Polish MYSZ, and then you have the Serbo-Croatian MIS with the upside down chevron. I probably should have written that out so that you guys could have seen it. Language is interesting, even how we're talking about, you know, Taj was quoted as saying that many of us, we failed the third grade grammar lesson because they didn't show us this stuff. In many aspects, that's one of the ways to unlock all of this stuff is through language. The other part, I think you guys already know that in the trucking industry, they are already going after people who do not speak, read, speak and read English in trucking. Okay. I threw something in the chat earlier today talking about how, well, for the Native Americans who speak another language, the mysterious Native Americans, because I don't know any of them particularly, but there may be some that's on a reservation somewhere that don't speak English. I don't know. Um, but I wonder, are they going to be deported because they don't speak English? Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay. All right. Peace, focus mind. Welcome to the chat. All right. So here we go. Here we go. Let's get some reading in. Page number 17. Chapter 1, Language and History, Voices from the Past. Inasmuch as written language, so far as anyone knows, is only about 5,000 years old, and spoken language by itself leaves no historical trace at all, one might imagine that language would have little to tell us about human prehistory. But in fact, it can tell us a great deal, not only about languages that existed long ago or long before the invention of writing, but also about the prehistorical migrations that led to the present distribution of the world's languages. This book will explore these two themes in some detail. In a nutshell, we are able to reach back into prehistorical times and reconstruct portions of languages that existed at that time by extrapolating backwards on the basis of contemporary languages and our knowledge of how languages change over time. In the prelogue, we saw that similar words in different languages are usually the result of divergent evolution from a single earlier form in a single earlier language. For example, if we compare the word for mouse in various European languages, we will be struck by the similarity of the form in many of them. English, Mouse, mouse, Swedish, Mus, German, Maus, Dutch, Muis, Latin, Mus with the hyphen, uh, straight hyphen over the U, Classical Greek, Mus with an upside down chevron, Russian, Mys with an upside down chevron and an accent mark, Polish, Mysz, Serbo-Croatian, Mis with an upside down chevron. All of them European words for mouse. And just on a brief, something that I'm noticing here is the Dutch, Muis. I wonder, does that have anything to do with the people down in South America, the Chimaquiqua, when they talked about the Musica religion, because Muis is the beginning of that word as well. So I'm wondering, is there a connection there because we're talking Dutch and probably Dutch masters? But let's continue. To continue, it is a safe bet that all these languages and others we could mention do not independently invent such similar forms for the name of this animal. Our first conclusion then is that all of these similar words for mouse have evolved from a single earlier form, which was the word for mouse in a single earlier language. In this case, the hypothetical earlier language, about which nothing is known except the indirect evidence of its daughter families and languages, is called Proto-Indo-European. So that's a daughter language. Okay. That all of these forms are probably related and thus provide evidence for the validity of the Indo-European family. Um, Words for mouse, even in neighboring Asia and Africa, take a quite different form, is obvious to anyone. We don't need a PhD in linguistics to reach that conclusion, just common sense. Furthermore, we can go beyond this initial conclusion that the forms are related to build a hypothesis about the exact phonetic form that this word had in the original Proto-Indo-European language. The problem is this: if you could somehow go back in time and listen to a group of people speaking Proto Indo European around a campfire at night. And if a mouse suddenly ran through the light of the fire, what would the people have called it? Since the modern descendants of this word, several of which are enumerated above, all began with an M and ended with an S or some S like sound. Common sense once again tells us that the word in Proto Indo European also probably began with M and ended with S. But common sense does not tell us what the vowel was in the Proto Indo European word. To figure this out, we need, um, to figure this out, you do need some advanced training, the nature of which is discussed further in the epilogue. Suffice it for now to report that specialists who study this family, they have been at it for 200 years, believe the original Proto-Indo-European word for mouse was MUS with a straight line over the U. The asterisk indicates that the form is a hypothetical reconstruction, not attested in any written source, or that the straight line over the U indicates that the vowel was pronounced with extra length, something like moose, as in modern English moose. In this book, we will concern ourselves very little with reconstructing precise forms of earlier languages. Rather, we shall be satisfied with merely identifying families of languages. We will see, however, that the identification of such language families at at increasingly deeper time depths can lead to a number of surprising discoveries about the origin and dispersal of modern humans. Let us then return to the main subject of this book, the identification of language families by means of language classification. To be honest, the simple example in the prologue, how to classify languages on the basis of the word hand, was ridiculously easy. One could scarcely go wrong. But can it really be that easy to classify languages on the basis of many words? Wouldn't the addition of more words lead to inconsistent or mutually contradicting patterns? Let's find out. European languages. Table 2. Let me see. Table 2. I think we got table 2. Do we have table 2? Yeah, we got table 2. Okay, let me see. Which one is it? The first one I put up? Yeah, that's table 2. Okay. Table 2 gives the form of 13 words in 9 European languages, 117 words together. Once again, your task is to classify these 9 languages into families and subfamilies if necessary, as indicated in the prelogue. I'll assist you with a few hints, but you could probably do as well without them. Parentheses says, if you're if you're the intrepid sort, you're welcome to turn immediately to table 2, but if you feel you need those hints, read on. Okay? I'm sorry, I had to look at something real quick. Okay. All right. As an initial strategy, try placing the most similar words together to form very obvious families, and then compare these obvious families to each other to find less obvious families. For example, the word for two in languages E and F is the same, duo. So, at least with regard to this word, you must group E and F together. The same considerations would apply for the words for me and you in languages C. MAM with that funny symbol over it, and TUVAM with a hyphen over the A. And D, languages C and D, D being MAM with a squiggly line under the A, and TEVEM or upside down backwards M. I mean E, my bad. Okay, I hope y'all understood that. Um, Let me read it again. The same considerations would apply for the words for me and you in languages C and D, which are virtually identical. You will see that there are some funny looking symbols in these words, symbols in which you probably are not familiar, though the sound they represent is not uncommon. English has two TH sounds, which linguists represent with the symbol O with the line in the middle and O that looks like a backward six with an X on the top. Okay, I don't know what you call them, so y'all just got to bear with me. The symbol O with the line in the middle, meaning the, okay, represents the TH sound in such English words as think, three, both, and cloth. The symbol that looks like the six with a cross at the top is used to represent the TH sounds in English words like this, there, either, and clothed. Okay. The symbol S with an upside down chevron and C with an upside down chevron are used to represent the sounds written sh like sh and ch in English. She and push have the S with the upside down chevron, while church begins and ends with the C with the upside down chevron. Okay. There are a few other symbols in table 2 that are probably unfamiliar to you, but we won't worry about them. Okay. Let me read the parentheses here. It says, they are the symbols used in phonetics, not in the languages themselves. Okay. You should be able to classify these languages without knowing precisely what each symbol stands for, though, of course, the knowledge of what all the symbols mean and which sounds are likely to change into what other sounds would be helpful in classifying languages. Such information can be found in any introductory textbook of phonetics, for example, Abercrombie's 1967 and Lauderford's 1992. The field of linguistics that studies the sounds used by human language, how they are used, and how they change over time. Before you attempt to classify the languages in Table 2, one final observation is warranted. Notice that where we would expect the word for mouse in languages D and G, there is blank. There is a blank. Okay, I got you. Where is that at? Okay, I see it. Okay. The fact is, we don't know the word for mouse in these languages. In the world of linguistics, we often have to put up with such partial information and do our best with what we have. As you will find out, such gaps do not prevent us from classifying languages. If you arrive at a solution similar to that given in Figure 3, you should congratulate yourself. Let me see what Figure 3 is. Oh shit, we didn't get that one. Give me a second. Trying to give y'all as much as I can. I'm sorry I missed this picture. So let me take a picture of this and see if we can get it uploaded for you guys. I hope everybody had a good day today, and that if your mothers are still living and you have women who have birthed your children, that you saw fit to wish them a happy Mother's Day for the sacrifices that they've made. All right, so let me get this in here. Let me get this figure up for you guys if you give me a moment. And I do thank you for your patience. So this is going to be Figure 3, and you should recognize this as similar to the other tree, this tree here, just to put it back into your mind. Or where's the other one? Or this tree here. Okay, and this one would be a better one to utilize here. But let me hop into the StreamYard on my phone real quick and bring that to the to the table. Give me a moment, people. And again, we won't be up here long. I don't want to be up here uh, too long with these readings and stuff. Oh my Jesus. Hold on, hold on. All right, family, I apologize for not having that up. This is the figure for 3, and it should be compared to this figure 2, where they give you this breakdown, where you see that Japanese and Irish, which is 1A and 5L, are the two that are isolated by themselves. And so now they're showing you a different correlation on how those particular things go with a different grouping, just with the first 3 languages, if you would. I think that's the way that's going. Okay. But that's the figure that they're talking about here. Let me continue to read. Oh, my Jesus. I hope they have these in the book. Okay. Where are we at? All right, here we go. If you arrive at a solution similar to that given in figure 3, you should congratulate yourself for 2 reasons. First, there are over 20,000 mathematically possible classifications of these 9 languages, so your selection of a single correct one was unlikely to occur by accident. You should have been able to distinguish the 3 main families shown in the figure with little difficulty. As the solution shows, however, the more precise classifications would be group C and D together with a node intermediate between the highest level 2 and the 2 languages C and D. Highest level 2, C and D. Okay, got you. All right. What this means historically is that C and D did not diverge from one another for some time after language 2 started to break up. Okay. It is because they diverged from each other later than they diverged from languages E, F, G, and H that they resemble each other more closely than they do than they do than they do these other languages. Okay, got you. All right, let me go back to table 1 so y'all can see those languages again. I think I saw Latrell come in here. Peace to you, bruh. Okay, so this is the language you're talking about that was to be classified. And this is part of the breakdown of that classification, the way that he's putting it. Okay, so I'm gonna put the words back up here again. Y'all should be able to picture that. Okay, but I want y'all to still see those words. Okay, so let's continue. If you didn't group C and D together as an intermediate node, don't worry about it. This is a minor detail that will become obvious with more data and more experience. However, if you did not determine that 3 main families are involved, you don't get a passing grade on this test. Let me see. Mm, okay, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Hold on, back to the classification. 3 main families. Okay. Okay, what's going on in the chat? I see some numbers popping. What's up? Okay, okay. All right. Where are we at here? Second, if you correctly classified these 9 languages into 3 basic families, 1, 2, and 3, as indicated in Figure 3, you have discovered the same classification that Sir William Jones first noted in 1786, an event that is generally regarded as the beginning of comparative linguistics. But before we give Jones his due credit, let's examine why the classification given in Figure 3 is the correct one. If we compare the words for two in the first column of Table 2, we would immediately group C and D together, and that's that DUVA word that they're looking at. And we would group them together, and E and F, DUO together. Both of these groups appear to be related to each other, and also the H with the DO with the hyphen over the O. Since all cases, since in all cases, the form begins with D and is followed by a U or an O. Language G, TWAI, should also be added to this large group, but this is not obvious unless you know that T and D are very similar sounds, as are U and W. Okay. Okay. You couldn't be expected to know that, so it's all right if you left G out of the comparison. On the other hand, the forms of language A and B and I resemble neither each other nor the forms in the one language group we have thus far identified. Thus, on the basis of the word for two, TWO alone, we would classify the languages into 4 families, which would be A, then B, C, D, E, F, G, and H together, and then I, where the an absolute double line basically would separate the families. When we turn to the second column, the word for three, we note that the forms A and B are very similar. Okay, as we turn to the second column, turn to the second column, A and what? Which word are they looking at? A. What word are you looking at right there? That one? Nope, that's not that one. Okay, you got me screwed up right here. Hold on, let me see. Or Salos. Where's Salos? I'm seeing the word that they're talking about. Hold on, you guys. Because he didn't go into the next one. Oh, those are the African languages. My apologies. We should be here. Okay. That's where we should have been. My apologies. The words are so small on this little thing over here. Okay, so we're over here. So he's looking at two, A, the word for three, and B, the word for three. Um, that's where he is. Okay. So I'll start again. When we turn to the second column, the word for three, we note that the forms in A and B are very similar, except that A has the O with the line in the middle and B has the S with the upside down chevron. If you know that O with the line into it, across it, and S with the chevron are similar sounds, one would not hesitate to group A and B together. But even if we do not know this, it would still be a good bet that the word for three would not be this similar in 2 different languages by chance. If one now glances back at the words for two in languages A and B, which first appear to have nothing in common, we observe the same correspondence. O with the line in the middle in language A corresponds to S with the upside down chevron in language B. Taking this into account, it appears in retrospect that perhaps the words for two in A and B are cognate after all, that is, both derived from the same source. If the word in language A consists of two parts, if the word in language A consists of two parts, let me see, I got to figure out where they are right here. Okay, that first word up there. Okay, got you. Um, say a prefix with that hook and that I, followed by the root dash O with the line in the middle, N dash. Okay, then the second part corresponds exactly to the form in B according to the O with the line and equaling S equation with the chevron. Okay, I got what you said there. Ooh, this like fixing a puzzle. Okay. Correspondences like this one are known in the technical literature as correspondences. You will note that such correspondences from time to time in the various tables, and we will discuss them further in the epilogue. We are pleased to find that the language grouping identified in the basis of two, the word two, has an equally distinctive word for three, beginning with TR and often ending in S. In C, you have TRAYAS. In D, you have the O with the line in it, RAYO. In E, you have TREIS. In F, you have TRES. In G, you have OREIS. And in H, you have TRI. And I left off all the phonetic markings for that because you can see them for yourself. And once again, the form in language I, U, and C, okay, appear dissimilar to all other forms. If we now revise the earlier classification we concocted on the basis of two, then taking into account the information supplied by three, we would be inclined to reduce our original classification to just three families: A, B, standing alone; C, D, E, F, G, H, standing together; and I, standing alone. We have, in fact, on the basis of just two words, arrived at precisely the classification into three basic families that is accepted as valid by all experts. When we examine the third column, the word for me, we find a distribution of forms that fully supports our previous conclusions. The first family involving A and B, which NI and IN, has identical forms. The second family, C through H, shows various forms, all involving M. Okay, uh, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, all have that M. The word in language I, BEN-I, differs from all other forms. Thus, taking into account the information in the third column, the classification is the same as before: A, B standing alone, C through H standing together, and I standing alone, as in that reference right there. Okay. All right. When we turn to the other columns, we find this three-way classification of 9 languages supported over and over again. Rather than confusing the classification, each additional word, wait, wait. Rather than confusing the classification, each additional word we take into account confirms again and again that our early conclusions were fully justified. In addition to the evidence of the first 3 columns, further perusal of Table 2 leads to the conclusion that the first family, A and B, are also defined by characteristic words for you with the KA, who with the M, not with an L, uh, shit, mother with a hook and an M, tooth with an S and an N. And I think that means, let me try that again. Let me look and see what they got. Okay, ending with those letters, or ending or beginning and ending with those letters. So let me do that again. The additional evidence for the second family, C through H, is no less, no, wrong, not there. My bad, y'all. In addition to the evidence of the first 3 columns, further perusal of Table 2 leads to the conclusion that the first family, A and B, is also defined by characteristic words for you, ending with KA, who, starting with M, not, starting with an L, mother, ending, it's got a hook and an M in there. I don't know where that's coming from. Uh, Tooth, starting with an S, ending with an N. Heart, starting with an L, ending with a B. And foot, having R at the beginning, G in the middle, and L at the end, where G has become J with the upside down chevron in A. Hope y'all caught that. It'd be nice to have a whiteboard around this bitch. I'm sorry, where y'all can see me, where I can write some of this stuff down, but I can't do both right now. Okay, so I apologize for the presentation. Okay, so the additional evidence of the second family, C through H, is no less impressive. You with the TU, not starting with an N, mother being mater, M-A-T-E-R, father being pater, P-A-T-E-R, tooth being dent, D-E-N-T, heart starting with a K, R in the middle, D at the end, foot starting with a P, ending with a D, like foot, pat, okay, never mind. Mouse, um, M-U-S, and he carries, starting with the B, R in the middle, T at the end. And I'm hoping y'all looking at the chart so y'all can see what they're talking about, because I can't do both either. The final language, I, exhibits almost no similarities with the others. The word for who, K-I-M, does begin with the consonant K, as in the second family, but the final consonant is different, and the chances of a random resemblance of a single consonant in two languages are fairly large, since most languages have only 10 to 20 different consonants. Similarly, the word for father, based on the consonant B, resembles somewhat the forms of the first family, but again, the resemblance of a single consonant is not probative. Once again, I emphasize that this does not mean that language I is unrelated to the other 8 languages, for classifications tell us nothing about unrelatedness. They tell us rather what languages can be shown to be related and how, on the basis of the available evidence and on the basis of the data in Table 2, language I should be classified as a family consisting of one language, since as far as our example takes us, there are virtually no visible similarities between I and the other languages. And see, in the back of my mind, family, I'm actually wondering how these people came together, because and how they developed, because I was noticing that with the I reference, they talked about Japan standing alone or Japanese standing alone. And what I was also noticing is while Japanese is standing alone, where's Mandarin? Where's what we call Chinese? Where is that? Where are the rest of the languages at? So I found that to be curious, and wanted to see if I can delve into that a little bit more. But let's continue. It's going to be a little technical for a minute, okay? Oh, no, we just did the technical part. Okay. Um, there's similar between I and other. Okay. You may also have asked yourself how language H can belong to a large group characterized by the word moose for mouse, when its word for mouse is lux, L-U-X. It looks totally different, okay? How could H be a member of the putative family, putative, P-U-T-A-V, P-U-T-A-V, shit, P-U-T-A-T-I-V-E, okay? Um, how can H be a member of this putative family and have such a radical different word for mouse? Very simply, there is no reason to expect that every language in a family will have preserved every word in the proto language. In fact, we know that in the real world, various words are replaced or lost in various languages all the time. And the reflection of the ancient store of words in the modern languages is always imperfect. But the reflection here is clear enough to allow us to perceive easily that the 9 languages in Table 2 fall naturally into just 3 families. The languages that I chose for you for your first test are as follows. Shit. The languages that I showed for your first test. Really? Oh, this is crazy. Um, A through I had something different than what we're getting ready to read here. So if you guys are writing this down in the interim, y'all might want to get this list, this A through I list right here. Okay. So hopefully y'all can write it as I read it. It says the languages that I chose for your first test are as follows. A equals Arabic, B equals Hebrew, C equals Sanskrit, D equals Avestan, Avestan, E equals Classical Greek. Hold on, you guys. Equals Classical Greek. F equals Latin. G equals Gothic. H equals Old Irish. And I equals Turkish. I'm going to read that again for you. Welcome to the room, Karma came to collect. Again, I'll read it one more time. A equals Arabic. B equals Hebrew. C equals Sanskrit. D equals Avestan. E equals Classical Greek. F equals Latin. G equals Gothic. H equals Old Irish. And I equals Turkish. To continue, before you protest that Arabic, Hebrew, Sanskrit, Avestan, and Turkish are not European languages and should not have been included in the table of European languages, I admit that I deliberately led you astray. I wanted you to classify these languages strictly on the basis of the linguistic evidence found in them without being prejudiced by such irrelevant information as where a language is spoken, the skin color of its speakers, or the mode of subsistence, there it is, of the speaker. Let this be a warning that some of the other tables may well contain ringers too. That is, languages that are not actually spoken in the area supposedly being studied. The lesson you should draw from my deception is that linguistic boundaries often transcend both geographical boundaries, for example, Africa, Europe, Asia, and political boundaries, for example, Canada, United States, and Mexico. Sanskrit, a language spoken in northern India during the first millennia BC, is still used in the Hindu religion in much the way Latin was still used by the Catholic Church until recently. And just as Latin gave rise to the modern Romance languages, the language that was originally Sanskrit has evolved over 3 millennia into several dozen distinct languages, including Hindi, Bengali, Gujarati, and Punjabi, all spoken in northern India, and Nepali, spoken in Nepal. In a similar fashion, Avestan, the sacred language of the ancient Persians, have given rise to the modern Iranian languages, including Farsi and Kurdish. Gothic is the language of the oldest Germanic text, a translation of the Bible made in the middle of the 4th century AD in what is today northern Bulgaria. The first family you identified, A and B, is known as the Semitic family. And I think he's getting ready to switch um, to this other one right here. I think he's getting ready to switch to this map right here. Okay. Um, and is that a he that wrote this book? No, never mind. Okay. The first family you identified, A and B, is known as the Semitic family. Though Arabic and Hebrew are probably the two best known Semitic languages today, there are altogether some 20 extant Semitic languages, in addition to such important extinct languages as Akkadian, Phoenician, and Ge'ez. Other Semitic languages still spoken include Amharic, the national language of Ethiopia, and Tigrin- Tigrinya, the national language of the newly independent country of Eritrea. The second family, C through H, is the Indo-European family, which contains all of the language presently spoken in Europe, with very few exceptions. For example, Basque, Hungarian, Finnish, and Estonian. The Indo-European languages also extend into Asia, running through Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan into India. Turkish, I, is one member of the family called Turkic, which includes about 30 other languages. For example, Uzbek, Kazakh, Azerbaijani, and Yakut, extending from Turkey across Asia as far as northeastern Siberia. The geographic distribution of these three families is shown in Map 1, which is on your screen right now. I chose these languages for your first test, not at random, but rather because it is precisely these languages that Sir William Jones first classified in just the manner we have at the inception of historical linguistics. Jones' recognition, Jones's recognition of the Indo-European families in his third discourse of the Asiatic Society, Calcutta in 1786, has been called, quote, one of the most quoted formulations among all scholarly formulations in all disciplines. In the history of ideas, it stands as one of the great conceptions that attempt to explain human beings and their intellectual cultural advances. In some ways, it ultimately separated language from religion as clearly as Darwin later separated science from religion. It moved language study away from mythology, speculation, and intuition and toward the sciences. This can be found in Canon, Cannon, 1990, page 360, end quote. Jones Jones is Jones's postulation of an Indo-European family was as follows. Quote, the Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either, yet bearing to both of them a stronger affinity, both in the roots of verbs and in the forms of grammar, that could possibly have been produced by accident, so strong indeed that no philologer could examine them uh, all three without believing them to have sprung from some common source which perhaps no longer exists. There is a similar reason, though not quite so forcible, for supposing that both the Gothic and the Celtic, though blended with a very different idiom, had the same origin with the Sanskrit and the Old Persian equivalent of Avestan might be added to the same family. End quote. That was a long ass fucking sentence, y'all. I swear to God. Hold on, what y'all saying in the chat? I see a number up there. What you got? Okay. To continue. It was not by accident that Jones chose these particular languages to compare. In addition to serving as a Supreme Court justice in India, Jones had a lifelong fascination with language and was reputed to have mastered some 28 languages. Of these, he knew Latin, Classical Greek, Persian, Sanskrit, and Arabic well, and with the aid of a dictionary, he could read Hebrew, Turkish, Hindi, Bengali, German, and Spanish, among others. Still other languages he had studied more briefly: Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Coptic, and Amharic. From his extensive linguistic studies, Jones had realized that Arabic, Hebrew, Chaldean, also called Akkadian, the one with two Ks, and Amharic, which Jones referred to as Ethiopic, belonged to the same family now called Semitic. And he knew that Turkish was a member of neither the Indo-European nor Semitic families. So when Jones outlined the membership of the Indo-European family in 1786, he excluded such languages as Arabic, Hebrew, and Turkish, not because he didn't look at uh, hadn't looked at them, but rather because he had looked at them and had seen at a glance, just as you saw in Table 2, that these languages were totally different. We would not be giving Jones his due credit, however, if we were merely to mention that he noted similarities among Indo-European languages. His crowning achievement was not that he saw these similarities, but that he explained them. And the evolutionary explanation he gave, decent or descend with modification from a common ancestor, with, was the one Darwin would give 72 years later for biology, with the addition of natural sciences, which does not apply in language. Even before Jones, resemblances among languages had been recognized, say between Classical Greek and Latin, but the explanation was that one language had changed into the other. In this case, Greek was thought to have given rise to Latin, as described in the Aeneid. When it was recognized that Sanskrit shared many words with both Greek and Latin, the hypothesis was revised. Perhaps Sanskrit had given rise to Classical Greek in the same manner that Classical Greek later gave rise to Latin. This was an evolutionary explanation and a static framework. Um, this was an evolutionary explanation in a static framework. There was no sense of historical depth, no sense that the relationships among these languages were more complex than simply one language giving rise to another. In very simple fashion, scholars of the day were attempting to derive all languages from one language, with Hebrew the favorite choice, though one Dutch scholar held out resolutely and patriotically for Dutch. Jones realized, however, that the mother language of Latin, Classical Greek, and Sanskrit no longer existed, and that the similarities among them were due to their having each inherited these words independently from Proto-Indo-European. Today, over a century after Darwin, such a conception seems natural and obvious, but to the static mode of thinking of the 18th century, it was revolutionary. To better understand what kind of evidence led Jones to his discovery in the Indo-European family, let us examine in slightly more detail one of the words that Jones recognized belonging to the Indo-European origin, one that you too identify in Table 2, namely the word for he carries, which takes the form of B-R-T. In other words, starting with B, having an R in the middle, and ending with a T. Let me see what he has. What you say, Milestones? My boy, don't that ain't my boy. That ain't my boy. Okay, but I hear you. I hear you, bro. Okay, let's continue. It says you would. Let me go back to the list so y'all can see that. Y'all see the map. That wasn't hard to memorize. Let me go back to what he's talking about here. He's still looking at this right here. Okay, and the word for he carries, and that would be this last column over here. Okay. Starting with the B, having an R in the middle, ending with a D. And remember that T's and D's are often interchangeable. Even here in G, all the way at the end, you see that O with the line in the middle, recalling first of all that that's the TH sound, if you would. Okay. So you see some similarities in there. Okay. So let me continue reading. It says you were able to group the words he carried together on the basis of their overall resemblance and form. But Jones knew that the resemblance was even deeper in that the final T was the marker of the third person he, and that the initial portion of the word be and are was a verb root carry. I hope y'all caught that. Damn, this is going to be interesting trying to figure this shit out or understand what I've already been saying. Um, just speaking in English, knowing some of the roots of it, if you would. But it says the English verb bear, 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 is a direct descendant of this root. So that B dash R. So, okay, bear, carry, got you, easy. It says it was these kinds of facts that Jones was referring to when he mentioned a strong affinity in the roots of verbs and in the forms of grammar among the various Indo-European languages. Furthermore, just as T marked the third person singular he, first person I was represented by the ending M, and the second person you by the ending S. There was such, okay, I got that. There was thus a complete verbal paradigm reflected in various degrees in various languages whereby suffixes were added to the verbal root to express the first, third persons. In Sanskrit, the three forms of Bharama, I carry, and Bharasi, you carry, and Bharati, he carries. Okay. Bharami, Bharasi, and Bharati. Okay. Okay. Next subsection. All right. Next subsection. Where's that next? Uh-oh. Man, they don't bring in the African ones until chapter 2. Where we at? How long have we been up here? Okay. We're hitting the last couple pages for chapter 1. Okay. Can't read through this fast because you got to read with comprehension and understanding. So this subsection right here for chapter 1 says why languages change. All right. We have seen in this chapter that it is possible to classify languages into language families on the basis of similarities in words, the assumption being that over time a single original word can change in various ways, though both phonetically and semantically and semet, though both phonetic and semantic shifts in various daughter languages. Did I say though? I meant through. Okay. Let's do that again. We have seen in this chapter that it is possible to classify languages into language families on the basis of similarities in words, the assumption being that over time a single original word can change in various ways through both phonetic and semantic shifts in various daughter languages. The question we haven't yet touched upon, however, is why languages change at all. Our first reaction might well be that it was that might well be that this is the wrong question to ask. After all, everything in the natural world is constantly changing, from the weather to fashion. So shouldn't we expect language too to be in a constant state of flux? I reply to this flip response my the reply to this flip response is of course, but that doesn't really answer the question of why languages change. In fact, it has long been clear that there is no single simple reason why languages change. Rather, there are a whole series of reasons which interact in incredibly complex ways to produce the linguistic variations that we perceive in the world's language families. Though it is a point that is seldom appreciated, linguists have learned which linguistic changes are normal or usual and which are abnormal, non existent, largely from the process of classifying the world's languages. We know what linguistic changes are likely to occur by comparing real languages as you have done and will do in this book. And as you classify the languages in various tables, you will come to sense what linguistic change is really like. In the epilogue, we will examine certain aspects of linguistic change in more detail, but since considerations are really more appropriate after we have some firsthand contact with real languages. Let me read that again because I'm not sure if I wrote that sentence right. In the epilogue, we will examine certain aspects of linguistic change in more detail, but such considerations are really more appropriate after we have some firsthand contact with real languages. For now, we will examine briefly a few of the general factors that are responsible for language change. One of the most important of these factors is a general human tendency to make things simpler, which is variously described as ease of articulation or human laziness. Let us consider an example. In many languages around the world, we find that P, T, and K have changed into B, D, and G, respectively, when they occur between vowels. Thus, language A might have ABA, fish, UDA, walk, and PAGA, tree, while the closely related languages B, C, and D all have APA, UTA, and PAKA for the same three words. But why PTK tends to become BDG between vowels? The answer is that vowels are pronounced with the vocal cords vibrating, and so are the consonants B, D, G. For PTK, however, the vocal cords do not vibrate. In fact, it is precisely the vibration of the vocal cords that distinguish P from B, T from D, and K from G. So to pronounce, say, ABA, ABBA, the speaker needs only to turn the vocal cords on at the start of the word, pronounce A, then B, then A, and then turn them off. To pronounce APA, however, the speaker must first turn the vocal cords on, pronounce A, then turn the vocal cords off and pronounce P, then turn the vocal cords back on to pronounce A, APA, and finally turn them off at the end of the word. In other words, the vocal cords must be turned on and off twice to produce APA and only once for ABBA. It is in this sense that ABBA is easier to say than APA. Changes like this can take place almost imperceptibly in language. In fact, if you are a speaker of standard American English, the odds are that you pronounce water as wada or wada, WADR, and would consider a pronunciation of WATR foreign. Water wada. Uh, I, I don't know if we speak. No, I'm sorry, that confused me right there because I don't say wada, I say water. Okay, but anyway, um, brackets indicate that a word is being written in phonetic symbols rather than the usual orthography. Okay. Another cause of language change is that people apparently like a certain amount of change for whatever underlying psychological reasons. One can only marvel at the rapidity with which school age adolescents adopt and then drop new words, sometimes in imitation of their peers, other times on the basis of a character in a popular television show. Words for expressing approval of something seem particularly susceptible to the process as the succession neat 1950s, cool 1960s, bad 1970s, rad 1980s, and awesome 1990 indicates. Of course, all these words were always in the language. Rad is a shortening of radical. So what changed was only the context in which they were used. Sometimes an entirely new word develops in language. For example, the Proto-Indo-European had a word for dog, KWON, which survives in modern English as hound. Mm. About 1,000 years ago, during the stage of the language known as Old English, a new word appeared, spelled originally DOCGA, which eventually came to replace the original word. Today, dog is the normal English term, and hound has assumed that more specialized meaning of hunting dog. Where did this new word for dog come from? No one knows. Who can follow in historical context its first attestation, its subsequent rivalry with hound, and its ultimate victory as the general English word for dog? But we are not likely ever to know how this particular word came into being. The Spanish word for dog, perro, Perro, which replaced the original Latin form cane or canum, Cane, is also of unknown origin. Okay. These brief comments on the linguistic change are intended simply to illustrate a few of the many aspects of linguistic change, a topic that is discussed in depth in any standard textbook on historical linguistics. For example, Hock, 1986, Antilla, 1889, my bad, Antilla, Anttila, for those books. Still, we have not really answered the question why languages change. It is all well and good that voiceless consonants like P, T, and K tend to change into the voiced consonants B, D, and G when they occur between vowels. This is certainly useful and information to have when comparing languages, but there are many languages in which P, T, and K show no signs of changing between vowels, even over long periods of time. Thus, if a change is going to take place, we are likely to know what kind of a change it will be by predicting when and even if one of these normal sound changes will actually take place is as impossible as predicting next month's weather. Or in the case of dog, why should a word that has persisted for 5,000 years suddenly be replaced by a new word of unknown origin? And why should this happen in English and Spanish rather than in German, which retains the normal Germanic word HUND, dog, or in Italian, which retains the Latin word cane, Cane, for dog? This, these kinds of questions we cannot answer. We can answer why various types of linguistic change have taken place, especially when they occur across whole ranges of words, and we shall explore this topic further in the epilogue. But we cannot predict how specific languages will change in the future. And that is the end of chapter 1, family. Okay, so I hope y'all got that. I understood it. It's interesting and exciting for me. Okay, um, so that's chapter 1. We did this about an hour and a half, and I rambled for the beginning part of this, and I talked without even having my mic on. Okay, so chapter 2 is going to be interesting, and then they'll go into Asia. They're going to go into Africa first. Hopefully, you guys will get this book, read along, or find some interesting stuff in it. But just perusing the first page of chapter 2 what is known, I'm seeing a bunch of stuff down here which may be of interest to a lot of people. Just to throw some stuff out here, this is going to be the chapter where they start to talk about Africa a little bit, and then of course somewhere in here they're going to go into Asia and look at some things in there, give us another map. But on the first page, I'm seeing North America, New Zealand, Australia, Caribbean islands, Portuguese, Brazil, parts of Africa, French, um, Haiti, Louisiana, Quebec, Indo-European languages, just some reference words, Europe, Indo-European, Asia's in here. So they're going to talk a lot about the other places in the world as far as language is concerned. I know no African languages at all. Okay. So that'll be interesting. And again, like I said, it's gonna, hey, check this out. Chapter 2 starts on page 33, but by page number 50, it start talking about Native American languages. So this should be interesting. Y'all might want to get this book. And then they also have on table number 7, they are putting in some Native American languages, just like they put them in what you see on the screen. Um, and then they do a grouping of those languages as well. And then they come into America. Oh shit! I didn't even know this was in here. Oh shit! This is gonna be real interesting. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, that's probably gonna piss some people off. But we'll get back to it. Okay. I'll try to bring some of these pictures from chapter 2 and excuse me, family, and download them or upload them if you would, so that I can use them so that you guys can keep a visual and see what's going on with this, because I think that's really helping to be able to see what the person is talking about rather than just imagining what the diagrams and the tables look like. My suggestion is to get this book. Okay. You know, it might help some folks. I mean, when I sit up here and think about what I didn't study and what I should have studied, what professions I didn't go for, and how those professions would have benefited me and stuff like that, at my elder age now, older age, if you would. Same thing with language. Give this to the young people. Give these to the babies. Let them understand language so they can break it down. Okay. Somebody might have to stand up with Trump saying, English is the official language over here. You might have to stand up. It's shit. To be honest, some of y'all had some of us, not just y'all, us, had some familiarity with language and training in language and multiple languages and stuff like that. You could actually start you a job right now trying to help those people who don't speak English, who getting kicked out of their trucks and shit. Okay? But hey, some of us aren't there yet. Okay? So family, we gonna call it a day at an hour and a half. We ain't gotta be up here all day. It's enough people that do that all day. And I just want to give a little bit to help y'all out, let y'all peek at something. And I don't know, maybe it helps. Maybe it don't. Maybe it just took up your time today, you know. But what else were you doing? I had time, so I figured I'd bring this to you in the interim. Again, trying to keep things in our um, forefront of our minds, because as they said when I was growing up, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. So, family, we're gonna get this outro on out of here, and okay. Hey, hey, it's some challenges up in here, Milestone, because I was like, how am I going to explain this shit I'm not familiar with? So it may get real interesting somewhere down the line, because you're seeing me, what y'all seeing me is trying to comprehend this thing as I'm reading it as well. So I think I did pretty good on this one. On the first one, I did better than I thought I did, and it just gets better. We just got to keep this thing going, keep this thing going. You know, don't let our bodies die out, if you would, because it's real easy to just sink into silence and stuff like that, or throwing things off where we don't read, we don't write, we don't think, we don't study, we don't do a lot of things. And, maybe this leads to, I don't know, some other kind of health issues that we might have, whether that's memory loss in the elder age or um, speech patterns or whatever the case is. I mean, just think of it this way. I'll throw this out here, and I don't know if you guys can resonate with this, but what if today was the last time that you could speak or communicate with anyone or even move? Say you lost all your faculties and you were still living. What would the rest of your life be like? What would you think about? The same things that you always thought about? Would there be a continuous loop in your head of where you are right now? Um, and would you be happy with that? Okay. I'm just trying to add some shit to my repertoire. Okay. So, family, we're going to go on and get out of here. Again, happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. And hope y'all had a good day. Hope y'all have a good night. Hope y'all have a good week until we meet again. All right. I'll bring some more for you until y'all can let me know later on if y'all got the book. But until then, I'll read a little bit more for you guys. All right. So, peace, family. We're going to get this outro and go on and get out, yo. Your way. I'm loving this language thing. Okay. Yeah, I got a couple other chapters of books that I need to read, but I don't want to share that with you guys. That's a little private study. All right, y'all. Let's go here on this outro, and then I'm gonna get out your way.
I'm so sorry for the way you motherfuckers get tricky. Nigga got it, I'ma break that motherfucker. My name's Staying They Know, but don't get me for the sucker. Cause if you take from me, then we gon' take this to the gutter. I'm so deep got bustin', fucker, I ain't stutter. Try to touch it, it's gon' be consequences and repercussions, bro. I'm from another world, something like the underworld. They say I'm blessed death for something like the southern girl. Nothing like no other girl, really, I don't fucking girl. Okay, you didn't know I'm not the one to fuck girl. All the nigga hater wanna hate us. Niggas can't take it when they see the money makers. We make a whole lot of money, whole lot of money. All we do is money, money, nigga. All the nigga hater wanna hate us. Haters can't take it when they see the money makers. We make a whole lot of money, whole lot of money.